What reselling tasks do you need to do on a daily basis in order to experience the most success as a reseller? Stay tuned and find out.
Won't nobody love you the way they should. Won't nobody check up on you, make sure you're good. Won't nobody check those body tremors for your neck.
Hi everyone, my name is Becky Park and I'm a part-time reseller, which means that when I'm not doing my full-time job as a high school choir teacher or, busy with my family as a mom of 2 kids, what I like to do is source clothes for as cheap as possible and sell them online on reselling platforms such as Poshmark, eBay, Mercari, Facebook Marketplace. There's a ton of other ones, and I like to sell them for as much as I can. Now, in today's video, what I'm going to be sharing with you are the different things I believe are necessary to do on a daily basis in order to find the most success as a reseller. I will say that the list I'm about to share with you is specific to my experience. There might be some things that you guys are like, you don't need to do that every day, or how come you don't have that on your list? I'm just sharing with you what I have found to be true thus far. So if you enjoy these kinds of reselling videos, things like tips and tricks, if you enjoy thrift hauls or what sold videos, definitely make sure that you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. By the way, if you're brand new here, thank you so much for checking this video out. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I decided to break this video up into 4 categories. The first category is what I believe are the must-do tasks. Like, you have to do these every single day in order to experience success as a reseller. By the way, obviously, as a reseller, you should also take breaks if you want to take off the weekends. That's one of the beautiful things about being a reseller, is that you're able to make your own schedule. But as much as I can, I try to do these things on a daily basis. The second category that I have are priority items, things that if I have the time in that day, I'm definitely going to try to do these things because I know that they are definitely going to help me make more sales, thus helping me make more money. The third category I'm calling if you have time. If I have time, I will do these things. But if these things don't get done on a daily basis, that's okay. I just kind of find time when I can and squeeze it in there. And usually it's not one of those things that have to get done in order for me to experience success as a reseller. And finally, the last category I'm going to call if you have nothing better to do with your life. These are kind of like the things that would be nice to do, but if you don't do them, they're not necessarily going to get in the way of you making daily sales. By doing these things, they may help you save time with certain tasks or just, help you do things with more efficiency, but by no means are these things necessary. So obviously, we're going to start with the things that I believe you must do. These are like a must for every day, and then we'll kind of go down the funnel of importance. Now, the first thing that I'm going to share with you from the must category might be surprising to you, might be something that you don't feel like deserves to be so high up on the list, but I actually think that it does. And that is shipping. I find shipping to be very important for a number of reasons. One, you want to make sure that you are shipping in a timely manner. I actually ship basically on a daily basis. And the reason for that is because you want to make sure that your customers have a good experience with you. In the day and age of Amazon Prime, people want to get their packages as quickly as possible. And so even though many reselling platforms like Poshmark and Mercari, they give you a few days to ship your items out before they start pestering you, you want to make sure that you get those shipments out as quickly as possible. I know over on eBay, you can select your shipping and handling time. And if you go over that amount of time, you can actually get penalized from the platform, thus kind of dropping you in the algorithm, thus kind of dropping you as far as your seller status, even if you miss your shipping and handling time enough times. Now, something that I have heard from other resellers is that when they stay on top of their shipping, when they are shipping same day or next day, they feel like their sales are more consistent versus if they are taking, a few days to get their items shipped out, they feel like until those items get shipped out, they are just not seeing as many sales. I don't have actual evidence to support that, but I do think that reselling platforms like to see resellers ship in a timely manner and reward those who do. And I also think that by shipping quickly, you can gain some loyal customers who will return to your eBay store or Poshmark closet on a daily basis because they know that you will ship the item out as quickly as possible. So for those reasons, shipping is the first thing on my must list. It's the one thing that I make sure to do every single day when I have things to ship out. The last thing that I have in my must category is kind of a large umbrella of a topic, and that is being active on your reselling platforms. I actually heard a story from another reseller who shared how, she sells on Tradesy and she hadn't really been doing much on Tradesy. She wasn't really active. She wasn't really listing a lot of things over there. And one day she decided to just go on the app and kind of clean up her listings a little bit. There were things that had sold on other platforms that she deleted. There were a few things that she dropped the price on. And she said during that half hour that she spent in the app, just kind of cleaning it up and making it more accurately reflect what items she had in stock and how much she was willing to let go of things for, she said in that time she made 2 sales or something crazy like that. So that just goes to show that platforms just want to see you active on their platforms as much as possible. And that can look a variety of ways. I would say probably the most important way to stay active on your reselling platforms is to list. I've always kind of shared how I think it's important to list daily if possible. And I know it's not always possible. I'm literally coming off of a season of not having listed anything for 3 or 4 days. But I do think that that is probably the best way to be active on any given reselling platform, because that way your reselling platforms know that you are consistently putting new products in your Poshmark closet, in your eBay store, wherever else you're selling. And something about consistently listing new pieces triggers the algorithm in your favor. Those are fresh listings. A lot of platforms actually even have filters that will say things like just in, so that people really want to see those items. And so if you had to choose any way to be active on your reselling platforms on a daily basis, I would say go with listing new items. Now, I understand that sometimes we don't have enough new inventory to list new things every single day. And if that's the case, then I also think that kind of, again, under the same umbrella of even listing are the tasks of relisting and cross-listing. So for me personally, I am a multi-platform seller, which means that I sell on a few different reselling platforms. And so a couple tasks that I try to do on a daily basis are things like relisting stale listings and cross-listing items from List Perfectly to my other reselling platforms. And I'll actually talk more about relisting later, because I do think relisting isn't something that has to happen on a daily basis. It's not a must. It is kind of more of a priority. So I'll dive into that a little bit later. But cross-listing to me is a must. It is a daily task that I try to do. And the reason for that is because cross-listing is basically listing for the first time on different platforms. By cross-listing, I am putting new listings on other platforms where the item wasn't living already. And so I do think that cross-listing is definitely a must for me. I like to use a cross-listing Chrome extension called List Perfectly. It helps me cross-list to all of the reselling platforms that I want to, and then some. There are a ton of platforms that they offer that I personally am not selling on. But if you want to check out List Perfectly for 30% off of your first month, you can check out the description down below. And I will have a video right here with a tutorial on how to use List Perfectly to cross-list. The next thing that I think you can do, and it depends on the platform, but on the platforms where you can share your items, I think that's probably the next important thing to do. I know, for example, on Poshmark, and it's also kind of the same on Citizen, you have the option to share your listings in your closet. And the reason why that's important is because of how the search feature works on Poshmark. When a potential buyer goes onto the Poshmark app or website and goes to search something, let's say they're searching for American Eagle jeans, what is going to pop up for them, if they have any filters on, is going to be all of the listings that fit that search term, American Eagle jeans, in maybe their, size filter, but it's going to show all of those listings in order from which items were shared most recently. And not only that, but it has to have been shared by you. If your best friend who also happens to be selling on Poshmark, just for whatever reason went to your closet and started sharing all of your listings for you and happened to share, an American Eagle jean listing, that isn't actually going to do anything for you when it comes to search. It just is going to show up on their followers' feeds. So in order for your items to show up at the top of the search results when someone searches for American Eagle jeans, you have to make sure that you have actually shared that item pretty recently. So it is important that you show activity on platforms like Poshmark and Citizen by sharing your listings so that they show up at the top of that search feed, because then they have a better chance of people seeing them and purchasing them from you, rather than if there all the way at the bottom of all of the search results of American Eagle jeans that hundreds and hundreds of other people have listed as well. Another thing that you can do to show daily activity on your reselling platforms is to do things like send out offers to watchers or offers to likers, or participate in promotions on Poshmark like Closet Clear Out and drop prices in your closet. There is something pretty powerful about the fact that on platforms like Poshmark and eBay and Mercari, if someone has liked your item or is watching your item, you have the opportunity to send them an offer, sometimes also with things like discounted shipping. The reason why it's so powerful is because obviously someone out there is interested in your item, interested in it enough to have clicked on the item, to have, hit that little heart icon or whatever. Perhaps they're trying to find the cheapest item. But if you're able to send an offer with an enticing price, and over on eBay you can also send the offer with a message, then perhaps you'll be able to hit the price point that the buyer is looking for, or perhaps you're able to catch them in a moment of just impulsive shopping, and then you're able to make the sale. And by sending out offers to likers or by dropping prices during Closet Clear Out, these are different ways that you're showing activity on your different reselling platforms. Your reselling platforms are noticing that you are making a concerted effort in making sales, and therefore it really helps you out when it comes to the algorithm. Another thing you could do is you could just kind of tweak with your existing listings. If you want to just go into some of them, perhaps you want to change some of the keywords out in your listing title. Maybe you want to change the prices on some. Maybe you want to play around with different things like, how much you're charging for shipping. Just again, being active on the platform and tweaking listings. You're showing your various reselling platforms that you're not just listing things and forgetting about them and, just hoping that people will find them on their own, but you're showing the reselling platforms that you are making an effort to have the best listings possible and to get as many eyes on those listings as possible as well. The last suggestion that I have as far as being active on your various reselling platforms is just answering questions. If people are asking you questions about the material content or about how it fits or about, the wear on an item, if you're able to answer those questions quickly and thoroughly, that obviously is activity on those various reselling platforms. And again, people typically aren't asking questions unless they have some interest in that item. Granted, I know that there are tons of stories of potential buyers who ask like 8 million questions and it never results in a sale, but you never know. Like I definitely have had situations as well where someone just wants to know one thing that I, for whatever reason, didn't put in the description. They get their answer and they make the purchase. I've also heard of stories of people who were, answering questions for someone or even countering back and forth with a buyer, and then someone else comes in and purchases that item outright while this negotiation or conversation is taking place. I think that's further proof that when there's activity surrounding a particular listing, just for whatever reason, more eyes get on that listing because there's activity surrounding that listing. So as much as you can, you just want to be as active as possible on your various reselling platforms. And that, I think, is a must for resellers. The next category that we're going to talk about when it comes to daily reselling tasks or just reselling tasks in general is the priority category. The first thing that I would put under this category is sourcing. Obviously, you cannot resell if you don't have items to resell. And so for that reason, I would say sourcing is pretty important. However, if you're anything like me, you already have a lot of stuff at home and sourcing at the moment is not a priority for you. And if that's the case, you want to make sure that you're using that time that you may have spent sourcing doing some of these other things, because not having inventory is not a problem that you are currently facing. Generally speaking, I think that most resellers don't need to source on a daily basis, but I do think that sourcing is something that resellers have to schedule into their schedules pretty consistently, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly, it's just something that needs to be done. Even if you're not leaving your house to do it, perhaps you're ordering pallets or wholesale boxes or sourcing online, doing online arbitrage or something, it's still something that you have to put aside some time for, and you just have to ask yourself, is it a priority for me right now, depending on how much inventory I already have in my house? The next thing that I have under the category of priorities is photographing. So you've got your inventory and now you have to get those things photographed. For a lot of people, this is already tied into the task of listing, but how I work, because of the way that my life is set up with my full-time job and kids and the fact that I don't even have a light box or anything like that, I depend 100% on natural light when I photograph. I like to batch my photography, which means I will spend like an hour or two photographing everything that I'm going to list for the next week or two. that works best for me rather than trying to photograph a few things every day. My life just doesn't work like that. And so photographing is a priority, but it's not a daily must for me because chances are I have photos from my last photography session to hold me over until the next time that I have to make photographing a priority. The next thing that I wrote under the category of priority is just the word inventory. That means a lot of different things for me. Again, the task of putting my inventory away into my bins or sending it off to eBliss. It's a company that I use to ship out my stuff. I know that some people, again, build that into their listing process. And so this is not something that could save for later. But again, for me, because of the way that I photograph and all that kind of stuff, I usually have a pile of clothes sitting around somewhere that needs to get inventoried. And the reason why that's important is because the sooner I can get that stuff put away and not have piles and piles of stuff just sitting around, the more organized I can be and the quicker things like shipping and stuff will be for me when it comes time to ship. I also think inventory management is important, just to have a good bookkeeping system for yourself of knowing where your items came from, how much you paid for them, how much you're earning on each item. I actually have made the big change of using List Perfectly's inventory management system to keep track of all of my inventory and just to stay organized. I do have a video about that if you want to check it out, and I will put it right here. But at this point, especially as I continue to scale my business, I think that having an inventory management system is not just helpful, but essential in helping me make sure that I understand my numbers and in making sure that things stay organized, that I know where everything is, that I know where everything is cross-listed to. All of that becomes very important as far as making sure that I'm not making silly mistakes because of my lack of organization. And then this isn't necessarily a huge priority as far as on a daily basis, but I just put it here because we're already talking about inventory. This honestly would probably kind of fall more under the umbrella of if you have time or even if you have nothing better to do with your life. But I would recommend at least once a year doing a full inventory check, checking everything that you have in your inventory against what you have listed and making sure that everything matches up. I actually went through this process myself last year, and I will link that video right here. And in doing so, I found like a whole bag of stuff that was in my bins, but was never listed. It was never photographed. It was never listed for sale. And it was just taking up space in my bins, waiting for I don't know what. So I do think it's important that you do a full inventory check just to make sure that you have everything that you say you have, or like I shared, that everything in your house that you believe is listed is actually listed.
Of course, I forgot to talk about something, and that is relisting stale inventory. This is something that I definitely make a priority, especially if I just don't have new items to list. I like to relist all of my Poshmark listings using an app called Seller Insight. It has a wonderful workflow. You see right away on your dashboard which items need to be relisted, so it's really fast. But then for all of my other platforms, I'm trying to get into the habit of using, again, that List Perfectly inventory management system, because I'm able to delete listings at bulk, so I can delete, listings from a bunch of different platforms at once, and then I can relist them just as quickly. The idea is that once an item gets to be, a certain number of days old, the chances of it selling go down dramatically. So if I notice that a listing is 30, 60, 90 days old, especially depending on the item, I just go ahead and relist it. And like I said, perhaps it's not something that I do every day, but it is definitely something that I'm trying to make a priority and do as often as possible.
The last reselling task that I put in the priority category is to bump up your listings. And what I mean by that is, for example, on Facebook Marketplace, they have something called renewing your listing. I believe if your item has been listed for 2 weeks on Facebook Marketplace, sometimes they'll alert you, but if you just look through your list of listings, they will show you with like a blue alert at the top of each listing if something is eligible to be renewed. And essentially all it means is when you renew a listing, it just bumps that item up to the top of the list of search results again. I believe you can renew your listing up to 5 times, and then after that, Facebook is not going to continue to bump it up for you. So at that point, it just continues to get buried and buried and buried under all of the other listings that are similar to yours. So at that point, I would heavily recommend just deleting that listing altogether and relisting it on Facebook Marketplace so that it's a fresher listing and you can get more eyes on it. And then over on Mercari, they have a similar way where you can kind of bump up your listing. It's not as easy or as simple as Facebook Marketplace, where you can just renew your listing and they'll put it at the top of the search. But what you can do is you can promote your listing. And what that means is you're going to drop the price of your Mercari listing by at least 5%. And by doing so, Mercari is going to promote your listing. They're going to, again, kind of boost it in search results so that more people can see it and they'll see the lower price. And people who have previously liked that item will get an alert saying that you've promoted the listing, dropped the price, all that good stuff. For both of those reselling platforms, you can only renew or promote a certain number of listings every day because they realize that it's a really cool thing that they're allowing you to do and you can't just do it to all of your listings. Typically, they're waiting for a certain amount of time to have passed before they allow you to renew or promote. The next category of reselling tasks that we're going to talk about is called if you have time. So these are things that they're kind of nice. And if you have the time in the day to do these things, awesome. But I don't think that these are going to make or break your reselling success. So the first thing that I have under this umbrella of if you have time is social media. I, for one, do think that there are a ton of resellers who are killing it, who have zero social media presence. And in fact, I might even argue that there are some resellers out there who are killing it because they're not wasting any time on social media. They're putting all of their energy and time into doing things like sourcing and listing and relisting and cross-listing and all that good stuff, the things that actually make them money versus spending that time on places like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. However, I also think that there are some who are more successful with reselling because of their social media savvy. Instagram, for example, can be a really great place to just build a following by sharing really valuable information like tips and tricks or sharing what brands are selling for you. And by doing so, you can do things like promote sales on eBay or Poshmark. You can do things like sell things on Instagram in your stories. You can funnel traffic from Instagram to your various reselling platforms. There's a lot of ways that you can use social media platforms like Instagram to help drive traffic to your different reselling platforms. It is a lot of work though. It takes a lot of time and creativity and energy to create the kind of content that people are actually going to respond to and that can actually send traffic to your reselling platforms or that can be used in a way to help you make money. So, before you're like, oh, I have to start, a reselling Instagram account, ask yourself if you actually have the time in the day to invest into various social media accounts. It does eat up a lot of your time. But if you do have reselling social media accounts the way that I do, I have this YouTube channel, I have my Instagram, and I will put my handle right here. I have a few different social media platforms. Again, when I have time, I will put a little of that time into, posting a helpful tip on Instagram. More often, it's just cute pictures and videos of my kids. But every once in a while, I will share, a nice tip on Instagram. I will make YouTube content with information that hopefully resellers find helpful. And that's something that I do if I have the time. But ultimately, I understand that by being on social media, it doesn't always translate into selling more clothes. So again, it's something that I do if I have more time, but more often than not, it kind of gets pushed to the wayside. Another thing that you can do if you have time is deal with your death pile. Now, I'm not talking about a death pile in the sense of you just have a lot of unlisted items because you're like me and you just enjoy sourcing more than anything else. But the kind of death pile that I'm talking about is stuff that you just don't want to list it. Like it's been accumulating dust because maybe the item is damaged or maybe you have to test something. Like some people will have things like video games, but they don't have the console to test it out on, so they don't know how to list it. Perhaps it's something that you just don't even know what it is and you don't want to do the research on it. A lot of people have kind of like a more specialized death pile of stuff that they'll deal with later. If you have the time, deal with it now. Maybe you make a commitment that every week you are going to list at least 5 things from your death pile, and hopefully over time you will see that death pile go down. Another thing that you can do if you have time is research what brands are popular and selling well for people. There are a number of ways to do this. One way to do this is to just literally look through sold listings on reselling platforms that you sell on. So for me, sometimes what I'll do when I'm in the car and I can't do anything else, I can't photograph, I can't, do a lot of different things. And so one thing that I'll do is I will literally just look for a category of clothes that I'm interested in. So maybe I'll look up sweaters or something like that. And I will look look at what has most recently sold in that category. And not only that, but I will search by price filters. So I will search by items that have sold in the $50 to $100 range, in the $100 to $200 range. And by doing so, I'm able to learn about new brands and styles that people are selling pretty well and making good money on. Another thing that I like to do, for example, like when my kids and I go to the library, I'll just go to the magazine section, I'll pick up the latest Vogue or In Style, and I'll just flip through. I'll look at the ads, I'll look at the trend reports, I'll see what the models are wearing, and that's a really great way to figure out what styles are trending, what brands are hot right now. And another way to do that is by following fashion bloggers on Instagram or Pinterest, or looking at, fashion trends on YouTube. Literally so many different ways to do it. I know for myself, it seems like it's hard to find time in the day to do that kind of research, but that is something that I like to do if I have the time. The last category of reselling tasks that we will talk about is aptly titled, if you have nothing better to do with your life. So this is if you've done all of those things already and you're looking to shake things up. One thing that you could do is you could go through all of your inventory. Perhaps this takes place during, an inventory check, going through your inventory, making sure that everything that's listed and in your bins matches up. Perhaps during that time, you pull a bunch of items that you actually just don't want to even sell anymore. You want to just pull them off of your reselling platforms. Maybe you just want to donate them back to Goodwill, or perhaps you want to take them to a buy-sell trade store, or try some online consignment like ThredUp or The RealReal or Swap.com. But that's something that you could do. I know a lot of resellers like to do this quarterly or yearly. They will just literally go through their entire inventory, select items that they're sick of looking at, and just get rid of them, just kind of clean house. I, for one, don't do that, just because if I've already taken the time to photograph and list something, by God, I'm going to keep it listed until that sucker sells, even if I only make a couple dollars on it. I know a lot of resellers are hurting for space, and so that's just not a luxury that they have, to continue storing items that perhaps were just bad buys to begin with. Another thing that you could do if you have nothing better to do with your life is organize. I, for one, am very capable of living just in filth. Things can just be so messy, so unorganized, just things all over the place, and I can fully function. I will get to a point at some point where it's too overwhelming and I just get all crazy and I go on a cleaning rampage. My husband, however, is the type of person that even a little bit of mess is just very bothersome to him. So today, for example, I'm currently in my reselling space that I share with my children, because this 2/3 of the room is actually their playroom. And my husband told me that he was in here with the kids earlier and he was just so disgusted and upset at the layout of the room because it just was kind of set up in a way that didn't make sense. And so he was doing all these measurements to see if we could move tables around and move this and that around. And so we took an hour to rearrange my reselling space, and I have to admit, it looks amazing. The feng shui, or whatever you want to call it, of the space is so much better. And sometimes you just have to shake it up. You have to take a step back and look at the space, or look at your inventory, or look at your shipping supplies and ask yourself, is there a better way to do this? Sometimes it comes out of necessity and frustration, the way that it did for my husband. And sometimes it just comes from you sitting there going, I don't know, I don't have anything better to do. Those are all of the reselling tasks that I could think of, guys. And actually, I even enlisted the help of my Instagram followers. I will show you right here the kinds of things that they said they felt like were necessary for resellers to do in order to experience success. And you'll notice that the majority of what they said was list. Almost everyone said that listing was the most important thing a reseller could do in order to experience success as a reseller. I can't say I disagree. But if you do, let me know in the comments below. Or if you feel like I missed something that you feel like, oh man, I can't believe you didn't talk about this, definitely let me know. I totally could have forgotten something. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button on your way out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.